Ladies and gentlemen, now moving forward, we have a very interesting panel discussion lined up for you next, in which we will unravel, discuss, and understand the challenges that women entrepreneurs encounter on their path to success. Our esteemed panelists bring with them a wealth of experience, insights, and triumphs to this stage, shedding light not just on the hurdles, but also the strategies that they have employed to overcome them. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this session. Once again, let's have a huge round of applause and welcome on stage Mr. Karthick Iyer. May I please invite on stage our speaker, Ms. Anu Sharan, Chief Operating Officer, Well Labs, and Ms. Anupama Singh, Co-founder, Interview Cracker. Over to you, Mr. Iyer.
I think this is a very interesting panel. So we had this elevator pitch, which I was observing. I think 9 companies sort of participated and pitched their products and services. I missed the first one, so I looked at 8 of them. All of them were men, in that sense, right? I think most probably the 9th one would have also been a team dominated by men. So we're talking about 20 plus entrepreneurs who made the pitch today, and there were no women founders, right? Then we had the panelists, right? All the panelists till now are all men. That's what the whatever panel that I saw basically, right? Now, so if you, going back to maths, unfortunately I've been taking a lot of math classes for you guys right now. So essentially, if you have a coin and you toss that coin 20 times, right? You would expect the head and tails to come 10 times each, maybe 11, 9, maybe 12, 8, depending on the probability distribution. If the head comes 20 times and the tail comes 0 times, right? What does that mean? If the head comes 40 times and the tail comes 0 times, what does that mean? It means there is a problem with the coin. It's not a fair coin, isn't it? That would be the logical conclusion that you're going to derive. So my thought process, so I am an investor, I'm an asset manager. When I was looking at investing into early stage and I started looking at the ecosystem, then I said that why am I meeting only male founders? Where are the women co-founders and founders and so on, right? And I could see that this game is unfair. It is a flawed game at the end of the day. Like the flawed coin, it is a flawed game. So what we will do in this panel is maybe discuss some of the experience of the 2 Anus, Anu and Anupama, and try and understand how do we make this game a bit more fairer, because at the end of the day, I think it's very unfair, isn't it? If you look at it, women don't get funding. If you look at CEOs of Fortune 1000 companies, very few women there. So there is a problem in our society. It's a societal problem according to me, but we'll not go into that path. Let's focus on the entrepreneurship part of it. So our thing would be to really understand and maybe unpack some of their experiences and try and understand why is this? Why is there this unfairness that exists in this? So at Gurukul Ventures, a plug, we are starting something called Nari Capital, where we want to exclusively fund only women entrepreneurs. Whether you are a women entrepreneur doing a for-profit, whether you are a women entrepreneur doing a business, like a social business, or whether you are a woman entrepreneur running an NGO, we have decided that if we have to be a part of the solution, basically, at this point of time. So I have given enough of Gyan. So let me go to my esteemed panelists. So let us start with a basic introduction, I guess, so that the audience knows more about you. Yeah, Anu, you can start, and then maybe Anupama can go next.
Okay. Can you hear me? I think so. Yes. Okay. So I actually got started. I had a startup right out of college, so I knew nothing. So I related to the last panel, which is you just wear multiple hats and figure things out, which I did. Raised maybe a couple $1 million for our startup, went through Y Combinator, and got a little bit of traction. I did some things, eventually had to close shop around 2018, so after 8-9 years, we closed shop. And now I am a COO of an environmental innovation lab here in Bangalore. So that's a little bit about me.
So am I audible? Hello. So before I start my introduction, I'll just say that maybe you men are not inclusive, but we are inclusive. See, we have got Karthick here,
That's right.
women entrepreneur panel. So myself, I did graduation from IIT Kanpur in 2001, hardcore techies, patent and all in my name. But then 8 years back, realized that entrepreneur bug bit me, and now I am running my third startup. This is purely into speech AI and generative AI. With the help of that, we are helping colleges and students to prepare for the interview by basically speaking, not by just mugging it up. So that's about what what we have done till now here. Ready to take.
Sure. So Anupama works in the typical startup for-profit space.
Okay.
Anu has worked in the for-profit space in the US, in Silicon Valley, and she has come now to India, and she now works in the not-for-profit space, right? Now, my question now is that I'll go to Anupama first this time. What do you think are the three most sort of biggest challenges for a women entrepreneur?
So the first challenge, personally, this is my personal view, is that we do not want to be labeled as women entrepreneurs.
Okay.
We are entrepreneurs.
Sure.
Because I was never labeled as woman engineer, woman IITian, then why woman entrepreneur? So once if we keep this in mind from investor, from the entire society perspective, that we are no different. When I said this, it is no more, no less, right? We also struggle, I know that I have seen my male co-founders and other startup co-founders, they also struggle the same way as I struggled with my business model the first time when I was building that, right? So the first challenge is that, and I guess that once we fix that, then all the challenges we face is the same as the entrepreneur ecosystem is facing. And that's a huge list, Karthik.
Yeah, so Anupama, my question, sorry to kind of interrupt you here, is that, but if you look at data, for example, right? So why don't we get more women entrepreneurs getting funded? So if I take up the data, at least in the US, they do some kind of gender data. Less than 10% of the venture capital money goes to women entrepreneurs, right? Our startups with women,
Agreed.
right?
Agreed.
If you look at Fortune 1000 companies, the number of CEOs in Fortune 1000 companies, 8% of all the CEOs are women, right?
Totally agree.
So essentially, now my question to both of you right now, and maybe Anupama, you can take it first, is why is this disparity according to you? Why is that?
So this is a very much societal problem. What I feel is that today where whatever I am doing it, it's not an easy task in Indian society of, where women is there running both the things, the family and the personal front. Be it before marriage and after marriage, both the things. So only those girls or women can do it where the family is supporting. That totally agree, because this dialogue is not there for the men, because it's granted that if man is working, the entire family is supporting. If woman is working, so your first answer to the question is why less CXOs? Because as a society, as a family, we are not cooperating enough for a woman to go that. We can't differentiate that woman has a different hormone, woman has a different responsibility as a mother, as a family, homemakers. Yes, it is there, but we need a support from many aspects in personal as well as professional life. So unless it is there, I feel is that women are less, not because women are less capable. Women are less because, so this is the first answer. The second one, why less women are funded? Again, it's a mindset. It's a woman co-founder. She will be more towards the, she has some homely responsibility, some responsibility of kids. Maybe she'll take a break or what. As a woman also, sometimes I feel if I am hiring in any position and I see a girl who is now expecting, somewhere psychologically it comes in mind that 3 months minimum she will be on break, right? So me and you alone cannot solve this. This as an entire society we need to solve. But I'm happy to know that now at least this whatever gaps are there, now together as a society we are trying to fulfill, as you said, in Gurukul.
Yeah, Anu.
Are people familiar with that book, 0 to 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, so do you guys remember the chapter on hiring? And it said, and I remember reading this chapter, and it said, hire people like you. Do you guys remember that? This is I am not like you, so you would not hire me, right? Like logically, that is, so I think it's also a way in which we maybe think about, I would flip the question in what are the benefits of having somebody who's different to you? Because I think studies show, research has shown that there are benefits to not hiring homogeneously. There are benefits to hiring people who are different than you but share the same values. You can't be, completely different. But I think people are noticing that we do want to hire a little differently. We do want to have people we are valuing diversity because it shows resilience. It does prove that it makes a company more valuable. It makes a company more resilient. And so I think research is showing that this is good for everybody. So I would flip it to say, maybe in the past it's easier to hire people who look like you, but because we know that that's not beneficial, I think that's how we can focus on changing.
Yeah, so the other thing that I can add from my own personal experience is in Nari Capital, my co-founder is a woman. And I get a lot of different perspectives on things as with a woman co-founder, basically, right? Because I think also our experiences are quite different. So when I need to discuss something and when I have a point of view and she has a completely different point of view, and when we start discussing about it, so it leads to a very interesting conversation when I am able to see the same problem from a different perspective or a different lens.
Can I add to that a little bit? I think also, originally when startups founded, it was a purely technological play. It was purely tech. But in the panel here, just before us, you have to solve a wide variety of problems. In India, in the startup ecosystem, there are very few pure tech plays. I think Superblog was the only pure tech play, right? And if you look at India and the problems in India that we have to solve, very few pure tech plays. And so because of that, you have to solve different types of problems that are not just tech. You have to solve, with the food delivery, you have to solve onboarding, you have to solve so many problems. Now, with the multitude of problems, you want diverse opinions. You want to know different ways to solve it. And so I would argue, especially for the Indian startup ecosystem, it is hugely valuable to have diversity, to be able to solve different types of problems that maybe in a typical Silicon Valley pure tech venture, you never had to solve.
Sure. So coming to funding for women entrepreneurs, so essentially, I don't know about, from an investor standpoint, I'm talking from this side of the table. I know that, there's a lot of networking that happens. So you invest in people that you know already, right? I mean, you have been with them, you've spoken to them multiple times and all that. And typically, even though we would like to believe that we are sort of non-discriminatory and we have an equitable field, you tend to meet people from certain angles. So if you look at it, there'll be a high proportionate of IITians getting funded, right? And that's because a lot of VC guys would be IIT IM guy, in that sense. So we would be meeting them in alumni events and so on, right? Now, from a networking standpoint, do women find it difficult to network because most of the time it's outside of office hours and so on? And how do you resolve this part of it? Maybe I would like to have.
Outside office hours, yes, it's a challenging sometimes. It really, if I stay in electronic city of the Bangalore, and if some party is there in the Google office or some get together is happening, even if I want, I think that I'll reach home by 12 o'clock. That I do not, basically. So yes, it's sometimes a difficult late night or late evening networking, but yeah, sometimes we manage. So we try to balance both the world. So yes, but networking is without any further thought. Networking is non-negotiable for the startup ecosystem. We need it not only for funding, but for businesses, for connections. We don't know when which network which person can lead you to huge business or huge help in the business in entrepreneurship journey.
Anu, you have.
There was a couple of VCs that actually took a very interesting approach to this, where they actually said, I am only going to have meetings from this time to this time. So that I felt was interesting. It's not directly answering your question, but we are seeing signals of change in that people are kind of saying, I want to increase the opportunities, so I'm actually only going to do meetings from X time to Y time, which makes it so that anybody, more convenient for everybody. And actually makes it so that, I mean, I'm not going to speak for men in this room, but I think that sometimes men who might have kids also want to be with their kids. You know, I would imagine. I know my husband does. So I think that by doing that and by enabling more people to be caregivers for their children, it's actually helping everybody balance this out and have them be a part of the family as much as, you know, and have more equality there.
And there is this, I mean, I know this is sort of brushed under the carpet. The entire networking thing also comes with its own sort of safety issues and things of that sort, right? Anupama, would you have any tips for women who are trying to network? Because there's this entire safety issue which unfortunately is quite prevalent. I mean, things are getting better. I mean, I should say that basically. But that's also something which goes on in a woman's mind. So if the event is at 8 o'clock, gets over at 9 o'clock, 9:30, would be safe for me. One thing is safety at the event, safety going to and coming back from the event as well.
So yes, I mean, especially we are lucky that we are in a city where that
That's
thought
right,
is not much. But what I feel is that not only the women and the men also, we need to know where to put it, especially inside the event, right?
Yeah.
We need to know where to put the limit. That is up to us, and then safety will be taken care. But yeah, travel and all, it might be challenging if we are little interior and all. But fortunate enough to be in a city where, especially in Delhi and North, it used to, you know, it could be a more disaster, but here it's not that challenge, especially, right? Where everything is tracking now, your location is tracked and everything is tracked. Still some incidents happens, can't deny that part.
There is also this kind of phenomenon or some mindset that if you are in a startup, you have to really grind it and you have to work long hours. One of very famous, you know, corporate leaders said that we have to work for 70 hours a week or something like that. So obviously I found that to be very sort of discriminatory and not with the times. But I wanted to know your feedback, Anu, you know, what has been your startup experience? I met some really interesting women during lunch and they wanted to start their own business. They were doing their own startup, so that was really cool. So what has been your experience in terms of that work-life balance that's so important?
I mean, I think we actually debated this exact thing that had been going around, and I think I don't think this is gender specific. I think it's actually just age specific, honestly. I think in your 20s, when you get started and you have very little responsibilities, usually when you're either a woman or a man, you can kind of put in the work, grind it out. I think that's what this quote was referring to, which I did. But then hopefully you've gained experience, you've gained knowledge, you can work smarter. And so ideally, then as you get slightly older, you can use that knowledge and that experience to then streamline things a bit more, kind of work smarter and be able to accomplish similar things, but with less time. I've at least found that I spent my 20s doing a startup, and so now in my 30s, I feel I'm more effective with less amount of time because I don't have to refigure out everything. And so, yeah, I think it's more age specific rather than a general rule forever for all startups of all time. And if you look at a lot of companies like Basecamp, hugely successful, and they seem to have some level of, you know, balance between work. So there are outlier companies that are promoting this and have not actually, you know, detracted from their bottom line.
So final question to you guys, and then maybe we can take some audience questions. So if there is something that you would like to change in the ecosystem that can help us maybe make the playing field a bit more level, what would it be? One thing that you would like to change in the startup ecosystem?
So to make it a more, this thing I don't understand, I mean, I do not have exact crisp answer for that, but what I see in the entire ecosystem of the entrepreneurship, two things I see that is missing. One thing is that very good feedback from the investor perspective. always the answer which we get from investor, it's a sugar coated or something like that. We would like to get a good feedback from, direct feedback I mean to say, from the investor perspective, so that we can know that where are the gaps and how can we grow it together. Always we do not go to the investor just always for the money. Sometimes we go to, they are knowledgeable, they are seeing so many startups. So this I see is it missing, which personally I feel is could be helpful. The second thing which I see is that little bit of support in the entire ecosystem. It's there. I mean, at least being as a startup founder, I understand other startup founder challenge. But maybe I'm not able to support other ones so much. Maybe it is a time constraint, work-life balance. But that's I see is little missing. That the kind of an ecosystem where everybody is ready to help each other. These two things I feel can help us.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would say, I think one thing I would say for women, and I try to do this, is it's going to sound so weird, but I just pretend I'm a man, and I'm like, what would a very confident man do in this situation? And then I do that, and that helps me a lot. I think another thing I would look at is just imagine if you're making a hire or you're making a decision, and it isn't really specific to gender, and you imagine, what if this person were a man? Would I hire this person or would I work with this person? Then maybe it at least gets you to start thinking about, what kind of unconscious biases may I have? And we all have them. I have them. So just a couple of things.
Thank you. If there are any questions from the audience, we are very happy to take any questions that you might have. Are there any questions? All right. That's nice.
So we'll take one question because we're running short on time.
All right.
So we'll just take one.
It has to be a really nice question. So this is the only question that we're going to answer.
So I'm Shashmita Mary from KSR Educational Institution. My question is, as a woman entrepreneur, you must have faced some hardships and come across some tight corners. And what gave you the courage to overcome those situations? Because as a first year student, when I had to come for this event, I had to argue with my parents a lot because they didn't allow me. So when we come across such problems, how can we cope up with that without giving up?
That's a very nice question. Thank you for the question.
And your name please?
Shashmita Mary.
Shashmita, this challenge you will face every single day. Right now you are convincing your parents, someday, after some days you will be convincing your husband or in-laws. Only thing is they will support you by seeing your confidence, your passion basically, how much you want that. Right? Being as a girl child, I had a different treatment than the boy's child, not in terms of a very broad level, but I see that the challenges so I am brought up in Bihar, and that time it was not safe for a girl to travel alone. My brother can go to coaching, I could not go to coaching, so I had to clear JEE without coaching, right? So my confidence, my passion pushed my father that, okay, this girl also can clear IIT, let her fill the JEE paper, and he was biggest motivator to me. So what I'm saying is that every single day you will face this challenge, right? Because our society is somewhere, right? I mean, that time I was arguing why my brother can go alone to coaching, why can't I go? But now I understand it was not safe. Girls used to get kidnapped at those times, right? So, but your confidence, your passion will push them to help you. That was my answer, rather.
Yeah, I had a different experience, but my parents didn't want me to come to India. I actually grew up, born and raised in the US, and I packed my bags and I flew to India and I moved here. For 7 years, they would cry on the phone every day. For 7 years. I think what helped me was actually financial independence. So it's much easier if you don't rely on them for money, which is it is harder to do, but once you get your own job, once you are financially stable, it's hard, but still easier to say no because they can have a say, but a little bit harder to say no when you're going to do it. So,
May I put forth another question?
Go ahead, that's okay.
I'm sorry, we're taking just one question per person. We're running short on time. We'll take your questions offline. I'm sure there are many people here who have questions. Yeah,
So
we'll take your
Shashmita,
questions offline.
even though I'm not a woman, I had a feedback.
Yes, sir.
See, the challenge is that there are a lot of distractions in the world, all right? Your parents will say something, your friend will say something, right? I think what has worked for me, even though I'm not a woman, is to focus on what you really want to do. Yeah? And just focus on that, right? People will keep saying it and they'll get tired of it, basically, right? You just focus on what you want to do it really well, do it with integrity, put your hard work into it. Then people will start siding with you. Are you getting it? They will become your well-wishers and all that, right? So what I can kind of, tell you is that don't get too distracted by that, and just focus on your studies and your job and become financially independent, in that sense, all right? Good luck.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
you
sir.
to my great
Thank you,
co-panelists,
ma'am.
and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.